Hey everyone, and welcome to SmartBug on Tap, the podcast where we unpack smarter strategies for growth using HubSpot and beyond. I'm Alexandra Whitmore, VP of Sales here at SmartBug Media, and I'm excited to be jumping in as your host today. I spent the last several years working with companies across industry, but especially in staffing, helping them navigate the messy middle of sales systems and scaling. If you ever felt like your CRM is more of a time suck than a growth engine, today's episode is for you. We're diving into what staffing firms get wrong about CRM strategy and what to do instead. From poor adoption and messy data to disjointed recruiter handoffs, we've definitely seen it all. And of course, we'll talk about why HubSpot is a game changer for staffing agencies looking to scale without the chaos. But I'm not tackling this alone. Joining me today is someone who knows the ins and outs of CRM strategy better than just anyone. Sandy Moore, our Senior Director of Account Strategy here at SmartBug. Sandy's worked with loads of clients to untangle messy tech stacks, streamline workflows, and turn underperforming CRMs into revenue-driving machines. She's seen firsthand what works, what doesn't, and what it really takes to align sales, marketing, and recruiting inside one system. Sandy, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, glad to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. We have a really great episode today, so I'm excited to have you here, Sandy. I want to jump in of how to set the stage on why staffing firms struggle with how to adopt and utilize CRMs like HubSpot. One of the first things I think comes to mind is what is the double funnel and why does it cause operational friction?
Sure. So the double funnel is essentially using two different funnels for each side of the business. So one being for your potential customers. So staffing firms work with different companies to be able to help them hire and recruit. But then they also use it for recruiting purposes, finding candidates for those roles. And with that being said, a lot of CRMs are not built to handle a complex structure with this double funnel. And keep in mind that, clients and candidates, they move through funnels very differently. They have different journeys and it's not going to be the same. So what happens a lot of times is either one side or the other gets mismanaged and they're not really set up in the proper way. And it can essentially break the entire system, either on the staffing side or the sales pipeline. So this is, one of the reasons why it can cause operational friction. And then if it's broken, then everything just trickles down from there, including your reporting, and you can't get a clear picture of what's working and what isn't.
Totally makes sense. So obviously recruiters are using it different versus sales. So there's going to be two different pipelines or two different ways that each group is looking at it. What are some common CRM mistakes that are made when trying to manage clients and candidates together? What does that look like?
Sure. So essentially, they step by each other's processes, or they even try to create a process that will fit both journeys, which usually never works. In addition to that, they treat candidates like customers, which it doesn't work if you're at all familiar with, and most of us have been through the recruiting process on one side or the other. And it really then starts to blur these lines. You end up also with generic workflows that aren't really distinct to each side's needs. And then the metrics get really, really messy. So you need to think about what's important for recruiters. It's time to fill, it's the candidate stages, all of those different things. Versus on the sales side, with sales centric dashboards, it's more about, what are the likelihood that they're going to become a customer and purchase, what presentations need to be shared or documentation needs to be shared along the sales process. And so trying to combine them or find a process that fits both situations just becomes the most common mistake that I see.
Yep. So definitely need to have good workflows across both sides and data is key here. So obviously clean data and as you said, need to keep metrics aligned and make sure that it's basically helping both sides. So recruiters need their certain metrics, like you said, time to fill candidate stages, but sales also, myself being in sales, there are different things that the sales team would be looking at, i.e. recruiters as well. So that's good to
Right.
know. How do legacy CRMs fall short in supporting both sides of the staffing equation?
So really, in a lot of legacy CRMs, and not all because everything's different, the customization can be somewhat limited.
Mhm.
And if they do have customization, it is overly complex to keep up with it. And so when it's limited, adapting the system to support these dual workflows often requires expensive workarounds, maybe even third party add ons. So, what we're actually familiar with using HubSpot as a CRM, and this creates a more flexible structure and architect. HubSpot actually offers multiple pipelines within the CRM, so you can have customized stages for each of these two segments. HubSpot also offers something called custom objects. And so, therefore, you can have an entire database built all around candidates instead of trying to have it lumped into your potential sales prospects. And then within HubSpot, it has certain automation and reporting that can be segmented by these two different, essentially, processes and workflows.
Love this. So obviously, with many legacy systems, they force a trade-off. So either they need to support sales or recruiting, but not both. And obviously, with HubSpot being a more flexible CRM, the architecture really does support both pipelines with customized objects, automation, and reporting.
Yes.
Love that. And I made a joke in the other one, and I had said, where was HubSpot 10 years ago when I started my sales career? Because I absolutely would have loved this, and managing a sales team, having a one place, even from the delivery side with recruiters and sales, it's so much easier having a smart CRM that can host both sides of the funnel. So
Right.
obviously, data has to flow between both. You're constantly talking to each other. So it's crucial to make sure that both of our jobs and both of our pipelines are running smoothly.
Right.
With a well-structured CRM, and when we're managing both candidates and client experiences in parallel, how can staffing firms design their CRM processes that support both client acquisition and candidate placement?
Sure. So I talked about a little bit earlier, but separate pipelines. So
Mhm.
you'd have one pipeline that would track the client acquisition journey from prospect to partner, while the other would manage the candidate lifecycle stage, from essentially sourced to a placed position. And then visibility between both of them would be key. So by setting up these two separate pipelines, they would work independently,
Mhm.
but within HubSpot, they're actually, there's transparency. So you can toggle between each one to be able to see what's happening at each stage.
Yep, visibility definitely would be key here. What are some effective ways to keep both funnels clean, connected, and collaborative across teams?
So, definitely standardizing your qualification criteria. So, using clearly defined stages for both your clients and candidates within those pipelines. So, for example, you'd want client discovery versus qualified need, or client or candidate engaged versus interviewing. So, really, what you would do is you'd sit down, with each team and figure out what that qualification criteria is for them to move to the next stage within the pipeline. In addition, you really want to make sure that you segment, your clients and your candidates accordingly. So for clients, you may segment them by industry, role type, deal size. And then with candidates, it would be more so about their skill set, seniority, availability. And then what you can do is you can be able to then segment and filter these different individuals, whether or not they are a sales prospect or an actual candidate, to help with some of your targeting. So for personalized workflows and emails, and then also within your reporting across both funnels. You also want to set ownership rules. This will help to avoid any collisions by assigning a clear ownership. So internally, you can own certain contacts. So your sales team would own those prospects,
Mhm.
whereas potentially you may have a different team own those candidates. And then they can all be recorded and managed on those records. And then what you can do is make sure that you can add notes. You can even tag colleagues or trigger workflows based on knowing who owns those potential contacts within the system. And then also, I recommend having dashboards for each group as well. So, customized dashboards to show potentially for candidates their availability, which job openings are available, essentially certain skill sets. Whereas on the sales side, it would be more about forecasting for revenue projections and being able to then figure out which industries and prospects makes the most amount of sense that will help meet your revenue goals. And then you can set up actually in HubSpot dashboard alerts or even email those to each group to be able to then look at those reportings, whether it be on a daily, weekly, monthly, and of course, quarterly basis to see how you are progressing towards achieving your goals.
I love that. That's really key too for the sales side to understand where your metrics are coming from because obviously there's goals, whether it's weekly, monthly, or quarterly. So it's good to have that visibility as well. One thing that you mentioned earlier is for setting ownership rules, you mentioned you can add notes, tag colleagues, or trigger workflows. How can recruiters, sales reps, and marketers work from the same CRM without stepping on each other's toes?
Sure. So having some of that ownership does help. So setting those rules for who and when those updates can be made. One of the things that is in HubSpot is actually user and team permissions. So you can set up users to only have access to be able to edit certain items or maybe even only be able to view certain items within the HubSpot CRM system. So that helps a lot with establishing some of those rules and being able to have that clear divide. I would also say, in addition to that, you can have automated handoffs and tasks that would be triggered to certain notifications, those individuals who own those different contacts. And then it could match whichever side of the business that they're working on. So, if it matches a candidate's profile, then we would know that it would be on that side of the business versus a prospect, if they were interested in, learning more about how to work with the company. So being able to have some of that automation set up in the background does help with some of that clear divide and then assigning those tasks accordingly.
Love that. And one thing we didn't really talk about this earlier, but if a client does have an ATS system, obviously when candidates go to apply, how does that flow into that ecosystem with HubSpot? Obviously, you don't have to replace the ATS with HubSpot, but it might be crucial if you're having obviously two pipelines, recruiter and sales. What are some extra tips and tricks that you might suggest to someone that's kind of on the side of we want to get rid of our ATS and move to HubSpot, or maybe we want to integrate it?
Right. So the good news is you don't necessarily have to get rid of your ATS. There are potential integrations, particularly with HubSpot, that you could do. But if you are looking to move away from that, there is opportunities to do in HubSpot some lead scoring for both on the candidates and the client side to help with determining where they are, whether it be a cold, warm, or hot lead on the sales side, or a hot candidate on the recruiting side. So just keeping in mind that you don't need to replace your ATS all the time, but HubSpot might be all of the CRM and have all the features that you actually need. I know for a lot of companies that we've worked with, it really has become a game changer.
Yeah, I would second that. Someone coming in from the staffing world, not using a CRM like HubSpot and getting into it now from a different perspective, there's just so many things that you can do and the reporting alone and just being able to see pull those dashboards, see how a team is performing, how they're doing individually as a team. Coming into this as a former sales leader and at staffing agencies, it would have been a total game changer. I also led recruitment and delivery. So even seeing that side of things, how recruiters are leading candidates through their own delivery pipeline would have been nice to see that as well to keep that tracked. So it's everything you're saying is like light bulb. I love this. This is great.
Yeah.
If there is one quick win a staffing leader can tackle this week, what would you suggest?
I would say audit your current system and processes. Really go through and say, is this working for us? Where are some of the gaps? Where are some of the breakdown in our process to be able to determine how you need to move forward from there? So by being able to audit your current CRM is one of those things where you may even need to outsource if possible and look for an agency to give you that, you know, third party opinion to be able to be non-biased. So that's really the first place I would start. If you've done an audit, what I would also say is make sure that you look at alignment. You want to make sure that everyone is operating in the same place. There are clear assignments and rules for each one. A lot of times we create what we also refer to as SLAs if we need to do any sort of handoff between any sort of departments and so forth. So I think those are some of the first places to start is just to really analyze what's working and make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, totally agree. What's one long term shift that can prevent double funnel burnout?
So stop duplicating efforts. I see
Mhm.
more often than not that different departments, they just don't communicate with one another. And, we've been guilty of ourselves, even at
Yeah,
SmartBug. If you don't communicate, you end up repeating what someone else is doing and duplicating that effort. So start collaborating.
yeah,
That really is first and foremost, and understand what other departments are doing, how other things are being set up, because then from there you can determine, okay, where are the gaps and be able to align better and then not spend countless hours doing something that may have already been done or someone else is working on.
right. I love that. So honestly, everyone needs to have one source of truth here.
Exactly.
How can SmartBug help staffing firms optimize HubSpot for this use case?
Sure. So at SmartBug, we really help clients all the time optimize their CRM. And what we do is we look to say what's working, what isn't. We do those audits all the time. And if someone is new to HubSpot, we help onboard them to the HubSpot platform and really set up what are their current processes within the HubSpot system. And then we can just support both the dynamics of the recruiting side and the client acquisition side by helping build those custom pipelines for each side.
Mhm.
We also offer integration services. So if you did want to keep your ATS, we could help with the integration there within HubSpot, or we could talk about how your ATS is currently working and
Mhm.
what features could be supplemented or replaced by using the HubSpot system. We also then set up automated handoffs, alerts, and we do nurture workflows to be able to communicate with both the candidates and the prospects. And then finally, of course, reporting. We know that that's important to everyone from leadership all the way down to individual contributors. So having those reporting dashboards that I mentioned earlier set up, and we can create custom reporting as well as out of the box reporting based on what is necessary to achieve your goals and make sure that everyone has visibility from the top down.
We talked about this earlier too, integrating your ATS so you don't have to replace it, but obviously using a smart CRM like HubSpot can be a game changer for the entire recruiting and sales life cycle. So keep in mind that if you're new to HubSpot or you've been using HubSpot or you integrate an ATS, it's always a good idea to schedule a CRM audit just to get an understanding of best practices. Are there things that you might be missing? HubSpot's constantly changing, coming out with new functions and tools. Are you guys using those? Are the teams adopting them? So SmartBug can absolutely help with a CRM audit, or you can always look at a guide or checklist to help get started as well. That is something that we do offer. In wrapping up, so thank you so much, Sandy, for joining today. Your insight has been amazing to definitely help understand how to negate double funnels. Obviously, we want to make sure that both teams are operating to their best ability. Recruiters know exactly what to be doing, sales knows what to be doing, leadership has visibility as well as the team. And with all of that, if your CRM feels like more of a data graveyard than a growth engine, it's time for a reset. We've helped staffing firms of all sizes make the switch to HubSpot and see results fast. Check out the link in the description to connect with our team and learn how we can help do the same. Sandy, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insight. It's always a pleasure to hear from industry leaders like you from our team.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And I hope the audience finds a lot of benefit and value from today's discussion.
Thank you.